Welcome to In This Body. We're here to support parents and caregivers with embodiment and staying regulated and connected even when things get intense. Today, I have a speaker with me whose name is Iveth Balanta. Yveth is a traditional birth attendant and certified full-spectrum doula. She provides culturally relevant support for Latino families who are looking for dignified and empowering experiences during their pregnancy, birth, and postpartum. Yvette specializes in indigenous traditional care, Black and Mestizo holistic practices of care. Her practice understands trauma, honors diversity, and tends to the good relationship with our Earth Mother and all beings. She guides and advocates for women and their families so that they experience their birthright of passage, feeling understood, resourced, valued, and respected in their integrity. Thank you, Yveth, for being here.
Thank you, Nadine. I really appreciate you for inviting me. Thanks so much.
Tell us about who you are and the work you do.
Thank you. Well, my name is Yveth. I come from South America. I was more specifically from Colombia, and I currently live in this ancestral land of the Paiute, like Southern Paiute. And there is Las Vegas, right? I have been here for over 3 years now, and this experience, I guess, of being a birth worker, right, has been a really it's eye-opening experience. That's what I do. I support people. I'll say I witness them, and I'm just there for them during the time in which they're receiving their children into the world. So I provide us, education, but more importantly, it's just like I can just holding space for them so that they can have an experience that feels in alignment with what their values and their wishes are for the time. I think that my work resumes into being like a grounding presence in that space that sometimes can feel just so new or so overwhelming, so different for people, especially when there's like other people involved, like right in the medical systems, that sometimes instead of trying to help people, they kind of want to make them believe that they cannot do things or that they cannot go through the experience in a way that feels right for them. So I'm more of that person holding space for the families, and for women to be to feel empowered and during those times. Yeah.
Mm,
That's the work I do.
yeah, and it's such a lovely work that you do, and I'm speaking from being a mom of four. So I've had four natural births, and my first son, my first three sons, like were sort of born in that traditional medical setting, and I was very young and I didn't know. But my fourth son was born in a bit of a different way, where I was more connected to um, the mother baby relationship, and we had a doula who was helping us, and I could really see the difference in this situation versus my earlier situation. So yeah, um, you mentioned something around respect for values and the dignity for the family. Would you like to speak more into that?
Yes, thank you. I guess when we talked about being a supporter for people, right? Like being you name it, just like a health professional, like or not a healthcare provider, like in the case of like being a doula, right? I guess you may come depending on where your trainings are, what your trainings are, or you may come with this perspective of like, I'm meant to teach people something so that they can have this experience. Luckily, before I became a doula, I had already, been involved in the world of like birth keeping. I for my first birth, like when I was 15, and that was the birth of my cousin. Um, and having been in that space, like having had that experience at such a young age, and also having gone through my own experience of being a mother, and then having had the like the opportunity to be with my own family, understanding from them what it was to be present and what it was uh, that people needed at the time, right? I guess shaped the way in which I perceive this kind of support that I provide to people. So instead of coming into, again, thinking that I have a piece of knowledge that is key for them to then have their experience, is coming more into the space with um, just gentle reminders for people of like, you have the right to choose. You have options. Here are the options. And you can make decisions. And it's fine. Like, it's okay. And also reminding them that where they're coming from. Sometimes in these spaces of the, cities, and when you're pregnant, sometimes it's beautiful to see when people plan for their pregnancies and their families have been wishing for having a child, so they kind of have things ready just to welcome the child. But most times people is like, oops, it just happened. Like, I now find myself in this situation, and what am I supposed to do? Right. And this what am I supposed to do can turn then into like a spiral of like fear, and then decisions that are based on feeling like, I don't know what to do. I'm just gonna let these people tell me what to do. I guess my role is more of like helping people come back to themselves in these spaces. If there is a way in which I start like the support with people, is always, how about can we just breathe? And I put a candle, I put it in the middle of the table. And then I ask them to just look at the light and just say how they're feeling, like what's happening through their minds. If there's a fear, can we look at the fear? What parts of you and how the parts of you're feeling in this moment, very moment. And then I always ask these questions of like, tell me where you're coming from, what's your language, and tell me a bit about the town where you were born, and who are your parents and your grandparents. Can you tell me the story of your birth? Those are the first questions that I do, for example, in my prenatal visits. And when I make those questions, people are forced to kind of drop or their all these boundaries that they have around, like, this is what I want, I have fear around this, and like all their concerns. And it kind of puts them in a space of like, oh, let me remember, oh, it's true, I come from this town and I remember how beautiful it was. And then the story of my mom is this, and then it brings them back into reflecting, like if they're trying to have an experience that feels in alignment with what they want versus an experience that feels in alignment with what their parents lived, or like what they wish to live, which is very interesting. Right. So that I, as part of the education, let's say, that I provide, is speaking about like self-care and what does it look like for them. It's not about like giving you a list of you have to go and do prenatal yoga and do this and do that, but more so, can you tell me about the things that you like to do, the things that your body feel like is fun to do? Do you dance? Do you walk? Did you just like to go fishing? Or, all these little things, and how we can then incorporate all of these activities into the movement that the body needs for like the preparation for the birth. I also speak about ancestral foods because they're so important in the process of like keeping yourself nourished and nourishing your baby as well. Again, it's not about if you Google I'm pregnant, what am I supposed to eat? So of course, it's going to show you a list of things that you're supposed to eat. But I always ask, go back to the foods that you've eaten, like what's your comfort food, the foods that you ate when you were a kid, but the foods also that your families ate like 7 generations back. So think of all of those as the food that your body really knows how to process and really knows how to welcome. And so the foods that you're going to get more nutrients from. So those, and then adapting them, right? Because of the communities that I serve and like being myself a person who's like an immigrant, right, in this place, is understanding that sometimes depending on, our families, like we come from stories that are not uh, positive, right? And we have trauma, like our families have gone through scarcity. And so learning how, even within the ancestral foods, is like maybe your family didn't have enough to eat. And so how can you incorporate still the things that are part of your ancestral land, let's say, where you grew up, because you do have that information kind of embedded, right? It's in your body. In that way, you can then create more of like a plan for your foods, but it's not something like forced, but more so just coming back to your origins. And that applies also for the ways in which you can, there's movement, there's nourishment, and there's rest as I'll say, like 3 pillars that are like essential for having like a positive experience of your pregnancy, and then a positive I guess experience of your birth, and then postpartum. And then resting is just the hardest, I'll say, of all, sometimes for people, right? We come from this concept of it's beautiful to think that we are in a space in which, yes, women can do the exact same as men, right, in this society. But when it comes to bearing it, all of the responsibility and the weight and the, everything that impels to make a human inside your body, right? Create a human inside your body. Nobody else can do that. And then that's your job, that's your work. And you shouldn't be doing I guess anything else, like anything that can cause that you are not in a state of like relaxation, contemplation, pure surrendering to that experience. And so it's so hard to, of course, the reality of people is not, most of the time, it's not that, right? In these societies where people work all the way till basically the last week before their due date, and they're meant to go back to work 3 weeks after, and then they're supposed to pump and do all these things. And so it's so challenging to kind of touch on that space and just know that if there's one thing that you need to do, I guess, in preparation for receiving a new life, is, I guess, having the resources, right? And that's not just like financial resources, but also the support system that can hold you in that time in which you are just receiving a life. That's your full-time job. Being pregnant, giving birth, and then taking care of your child is a full-time job. It's actually, you work more than the hours that you're meant to work, just doing that. And it's okay. But I guess this the concept of course, in this economic systems that we live in is different, right? It's like you have to produce and have the child, because there's so many ways in which they can, like the society in general can profit out of you not taking care of that child, right? It's like we can sell you breast pumps and bags so you can put your milk there in bottles, and then we can also sell you childcare services and nannies, and we can sell you all of these services. So it's best to keep you in the mindset of like, no, you have to give birth and then keep working, and you have to keep doing all these things. And it's sad when you go back in time. I don't think it's been too many. I mean, I always ask those questions to the families, right? It's like, can you tell me about your mom or your grandma? And usually in the grandmas when things start to change, right? Like grandmas will not have babies and then go back to work next day. They will usually stay home and take care of the children. And more of the sustenance will like fall then into like the father will like bring all the supplies and all what was needed so the mom could make the home. And this is not a perspective of like, oh, this is sexism in any way or anything like that, but it's like biologically, I guess, the way in which we function, right?
Yeah, yeah.
That's how we build the family. Mm-hmm.
And I see like a sort of reverence to being a mother and like being the bearer of life. Like it's there's a sort of respect and reverence when we give it this value and like we allow rest to occur. Yeah. And that was a very big lesson for me actually in my life. Like I was like, no, go, 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 go until my whole body broke down. Yeah, yeah. Um,
Thank
you,
you.
yeah,
Yeah, thank you. And that's what happens, unfortunately. And then we have all. It's just it just keeps on creating more and more situations, right? A
mm,
person who's not allowed to then experience the full process, because people think like being pregnant ends when you have the baby, and then there's like we have to talk about this concept of like, you know what, you're still pregnant until you kind of deliver naturally your placenta, for example. So it's not just it doesn't end in the product that is the baby. It kind of feels like if it's like that. But also it's like your is internal gestation and then the external one, because we're mammals, but we also, we walk, and so we're standing. Like our biology kind of like forces, so we have babies that are completely defenseless, like they cannot take care of themselves whatsoever. They're fully like 100% dependent on like being fed and being fed from the breast. So this just outer, body kind of gestation continues at least for a year after the baby. At a year, if you think about, let's say, a deer, right? The
yeah,
uh, gives birth. Or if you look at all the animals, like most of the times, these animals, yes, they're nursing, but a few hours later, they're walking, they're able to run, and they're able to defend themselves from predators or, right? But humans are like not like that. So we end our pregnancy slightly earlier than it should. So, it's our bodies are like adapted, so a baby fits basically through the bones and all of that. But that makes it so that our babies are just so fragile and so in need of care. And so you are meant to stay there. We always remind people that we come from the nourishment of the placenta, right, into the nourishment of the breast. If you look at the structures of like the placenta, when you look at the structures of the um, glands, right, like um, of the breast, they look pretty much alike. It's like a little tree, right, that is inside. And we come from the placenta to the breast, and we're meant to be fed and meant to be there, like connected all the time, not just for 15 minutes. And then, all these rules that they put people, I guess the reminder, right, that it is the time of your baby, it is the time of your body, it is your time. And we've been removed from that understanding that we own our time, that our time is the way in which we live. Like, it's not a setting, it's not what the clock says or like the schedule, or, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. We own our time. It's not the clocks. Yeah. Uh, you touched on something when you mentioned around reminding people and mothers where their grandmothers come from and where they come from. So let's talk more into that. Like, how does our blood lineage impact us on how we show up today?
Oh gosh. Okay. That is a really big topic, I'll say. Besides being a birth worker, I want to say um an ancestral lineage healing practitioner. And I came into this space of working with the ancestors, right? Of being like in relationship with ancestors because of my own birth experience. It was so traumatic that I could not, I was just not, my mind was just not in the best place. And so I reached out to people, and I did everything. Like, I did all of the traditional things that I knew of, right? And I started asking my family and my friends, and they were like, okay, here's this healing thing, here's this session, here's this, all kinds of like therapies to kind of help me. And it was just not really doing the thing. Like, I just felt like I needed lots of support after the birth of my child, because it was just very violent. And I remember that I reached out to ancestral medicine, and they were doing their self-led like ancestral lineage healing course, right? Where you go and you basically do a process of like getting to know your lineages and understanding, right? And just asking for support. I felt that I just didn't have support from, my family, because my family was all in Colombia, and then I was here in the States. At the time, I was in New York City, and I just felt like those times where I could not talk to anybody, those times where it was just me and my bleeding breast and my hungry baby, um, and where I was just in solitude in these spaces, I just felt like I just could not handle those moments. It was just so hard. So when I started doing this and, was listen and talk about the ancestors, I guess one of the things that, one of those first assumptions is like talking to the ancestors is just talking to the dead ones that we remember. And so I had like all of these things of like my parents, like I grew up only with my mom's side of the family. And then, so from my dad's side, for me, it was just like I knew what some of them, like when I was an adult already, um, and there was just so much chaos going on in the family. So I was afraid. I was like, I don't know if I want to engage with with these people, like, or the ancestors. I wonder what happened right back then to then be where we are right now. But then as I started doing the work of like, they sit you in the space and they tell you, and you sense what's happening in the directions to just know how are the lineages doing. And for me, that was just very challenging. Like, it took me many sittings there, because I'll try to do it, but I was always with my baby. So in those very moments when I could lay her there for a moment, just come and sit there and do the exercises, it will help me to kind of come back into my body. So that was the first gift of doing this work, was coming back into the present moment. I am here. Then the other big lesson was the boundaries, right? It's understanding how, of course, a person who has gone through trauma has the boundaries severed. So it's like energetically, it's a person who feels like many things. So sometimes I always thought that I was just, oh, I'm an empath. I was just traumatized, right? It's like when you have gone through so much, like sometimes harm, that makes you weak in your boundaries. And so the lesson of boundaries with the spirits is just learning how to build them in a way that feels like, just uplifting for yourself, and also protective. So it was that. And then, I still remember the very first time that I got to meet one of my guides. And it was on my father's mother's side. That was my first guide that I met. And at first it was kind of weird. It wasn't like a very loving, welcoming experience. It was more of like doubting, right? But then when she started showing me everything, what happened with the lineage, everything just kind of started falling into place. And then I was able to understand the experience that I had had from a different perspective and start to heal from that traumatic experience through their support and through the things that they have shown me. Then of course I did all of my my lines and the work, and I just felt like I have to share this with other people. Like we cannot just go uh, through life like feeling so alone and so broken, and when we have the support right there and we just don't have the concept for it, right? And just so many things I'll say that started unfolding in my family, things that we could spend hours talking about, like how people, some people died, some people actually found relief through of illnesses, relationships that were broken came back to be well, and sometimes separations happen as well. And all of this I started to see from this perspective of like, oh, this is a gift and it's happening because it has a meaning. I might not understand it right now, but I will eventually. And having that understanding really gave me so much peace and so much a ground where to stand, I'll say, as a mom, as a new mom. And it also gave me so many tools to forgive my own mother and to help my mother forgive her mother. um, Sometimes we don't understand why these things happen to us or the decisions that we're making. We just kind of just go and just do it. But when it comes to the ancestors, there is awesome things and all the gifts that they are inherited to us, and we can always go back to those and reach out to them for their support. But there's also burdens that are, passed down to us, and it's not that uh, there there's evil in that intent, right? Here, I give you this burden, you keep on carrying it. But at the time when this situation happened, right, in the past, it might have been something to protect them. It's usually something to protect their lives that then gets ingrained into their, themselves, and then they pass down. So in my family, I learned, for example, it was, you have to please, you have to do what they say, because if you don't, then your life is in danger and you're meant to protect your life. That means that even if you don't want to do something, you say yes to it, because that means that you're going to live longer. And then me going through this process of like healing, the lines and learning, I was like, oh my gosh, like I see it. I see where it comes from. I see in which time this was so needed, right? In my, I guess I'm a mix, of many cultures, but having had people who were enslaved and having had people who were removed from their lands, like listening to those stories and then finally making sense of the stories that your grandma keeps on telling you over and over and you don't pay attention to, right? All of that kind of brought me into a space of, wow, now I see it. Now I see why I make these things. And then I keep on seeing it every time as like, so when I support my, my families, is I keep on seeing that. And so I have to ask questions of like, is this really what you want? Or you're doing it because this is what happened to them? Do you know that this birth is changing something? It's like changing the trajectory of this family for a reason. I don't know for what, but it's changing it. Everybody has done it this way, and you're switching things. So do you see how this is kind of creating an impact? And it's so interesting. Babies are born on the same days where their grandparents have passed, for example. Babies are being named after the grandparents. And then the birds go in ways that resemble the same ways in which their parents were born. Um, Sometimes it's completely the opposite. It's absolutely everything's different. And so I just witness. There's nothing for me to do there. I just witness what's happening. But I like to tell people, oh, did you notice this? So that they at least are aware of what's happening. I don't have answers to why things go that way, because I'll say that those are the designs of each families, right? Each family has I guess, a design. Sometimes it goes right on the script. In the same way the great great grandma suffer, everybody else in that like keeps on suffering I don't know. That's their design. But then I am very lucky, I'll say, of witnessing how most of the time, like, the suffering ends, and then this person has a positive experience. This person has an experience that's completely different, and how that affects like the family, like the living, and it changes so much for their own ancestors. I get to witness that, like the ancestors also, like their blood ancestors, in ceremonies that we do, like when we plant the placenta, when we read the placenta, when we're there, like witnessing how is the tree built, right? The placenta shows like more branches towards one side than towards the other, and each side represents a lineage of the family. The cord tells you like how long is this purpose, or how challenging the purpose of the life of this one that's been brought from the ancestors back into this body, right? Is. And so it's so beautiful to witness all of that. And it's just an opportunity to keep ourselves like closer to them, to the ancestors, right? To understanding, um not just as of like, yeah, whatever, they're over there, because they're in here, they're here.
Yes.
They're everything, right? And how we can just, in that same way that we get to see them acting and like, just showing up in this moment, in this rite of passage that is the birth, how they can then they continue to show up in everything that we do as now parents, right? How we behave, what we tell our children, the fears that we have, and then we pass to them, or like also the things that we feel like this was just not right, let me try something different. And I see the how valuable that part is, right? It's like, yes, I have the discernment to know now that I don't have to teach my child to be afraid of the dark, or I don't have to teach my child to be quiet all the time, keep your voice down. And I can just let her be wild and loud, and that's okay. So yeah. Sorry, I think I spoke like when it's just like hello. I don't think, but thank you. Yeah.
No, thank you. Everything you shared like is so relatable to me as well. Myself being an immigrant, and I come from Lebanon originally, and I've also traveled far, and the awareness that we carry our ancestors inside us, whether we want to or not. whether we're aware or not, they're still there. And bringing in the awareness changes everything. Because as you said, like you have this capability of understanding the stories that have been passed down, and holding them with compassion. Uh, and it changes everything, because you, in the present moment, you're able to choose differently from that place of forgiveness and acceptance and compassion, instead of fear. And um, for me, it was, "Oh, I want nothing to do with that. I'm gonna run away." Uh, and that doesn't help as well. Like the choosing the complete opposite, that doesn't help as well. No. Uh, you mentioned something around while you were talking. Um, I remember you mentioned it at the start, lighting a candle and just being a grounding pole in the space. Um, I want to come back to that, because how do you feel it impacts the physical body when we set this environment around the mother and around the family? What do you think the like the feeling that the body feels when this whole environment is set around it this way?
Yeah. Well, what I've noticed is that uh, a person who is calm and who is just centered, like the present, right? What's happening, what they're smelling, and what they're perceiving in general with their senses, is then a person who's more able to, um, like, consciously make decisions, like talk from the heart,
Mm.
uh, and say what they want, not what they have seen in social media or what the mom told them or what the husband wants. But a person who's like dropped down into their bodies and their senses, and when they're asked, "So tell me, what's your vision for your birth? What do you envision? What would you like to feel when you're giving birth?" Then is, when the environment is calm and is reassuring for her, then she's able to really express those wishes and really express her desires for the experience. And that's so important. If I walk into a space just with a paper, write your birth plan. Here, this is what the doulas do. Write your birth plan, and then we stick it to the wall so everybody come and read these rules, and then we make it happen. If it's just like that, then you kind of move the person back into the head. And it's just what you build with your head. It's like, what sounds so, I need books for that. I need a lawyer for that. I need these things so I can put it the right way it's supposed to be. But when you ask a person first from their body, what is it that they want to feel? The answers are usually, I just want to feel peace. I just want to feel love. I just want to feel pleasure. And then that's the mind, like that's the way in which you want to keep that space. And whoever is present at the birth must be then a keeper of the conditions, so that these things that the person is present become a reality. So it's not a person who's telling her what to do or asking her a whole bunch of questions, or, turning on TVs or giving her, none of that, those distractions, but more so it's like she wants peace. How can I become peace then in that space? How can I be peaceful, so peaceful that I do not interrupt her peace and I just become kind of like, I'm just this presence there, but it's giving her exactly what she needs. And I think that that's the most challenging of this work, right? Because when I show up, I guess I have my own rituals, right, to showing up. the way they try to make it seem is like, especially if, like, let's say you work in an environment that is like so medical, it's like when there's these many centimeters is when you show up, right? Of dilation, that's when you show up and you help them move up and down. You tell them what to do and you do things to them, and then you help them have the baby. And then when it comes to the doctors, right, or the midwives in the hospital, it's like, I delivered the baby. And then taking the full like credit for the work, so hard work that the people have done, like the mother has done herself. So it's not about me doing things for her or to her or telling her what to do. It's more so, how can I become the exact essence of what she's hoping for this experience to be? Is she crying? How can I just be the shoulder where she can lean on and let her cry? Not tell her, don't cry, right? Or how can I be the smile instead of telling her, smile? That's gonna release the good hormones in your body. How can I look into her eyes and just smile? How can I, instead of telling her how to breathe, how can I breathe with her in that same way that's gonna help her go through her process, whatever it is? I've been in births where the mom has been like spent the whole labor smiling, right? But I've been also in other spaces where the mom has been crying and screaming, and I see that it's not a pain in her body. And I can see that it's another pain. And then they tell me later, I remember the story of my mother, how this situation happened, how my grandmother was raped right when I was giving birth. And they don't voice it at the time, but I do know that this is a very healing experience. This is a spiritual experience. And so whoever is present at this, during this time must be in that, mode of being spiritual as well, like being in your spirit, not having distractions, not playing on the phone, not like, it's not about anything else, but just that very moment, because it's so important. It will never come back like any other moment in our lives. But that specific moment when the soul is trying to come, right? When this body is opening and when it's making space for this baby to come into this world. And that very first moment when they take their first breath, you're present there. So sacred, the most sacred moment, right? For us humans. And I'll say that becoming then that essence and providing that spiritual container is essential for the whole experience to be, respected and in dignity, which is the most important. It doesn't have to be all flowers and lights and candles for it to be that way, right? But it's about the respect that you show for that family and for that person who's going through their experience and for that life, for that baby that's being born. Mm.
Yeah, yeah. And to wrap it up, like what would the impact on the newborn be when the mother feels that this experience is being given the dignity and the respect? What do you
Mm.
think that like this impact on the newborn?
Yeah. Well, I remember the words of a partera, right? Traditional partera, which is like a traditional birth attendant that I uh, um, studied under, and she said, communities like are the way their children are born, and people die in the ways in which they're born, in which they're received into this world. And so we live and die in the same way in which we're welcome into this world. That gets imprinted in yourself, in your psyche, right? How you are received. At the time when the baby is inside the mom, and they're in the process of labor, babies that do not have filters for the emotions that the mother is having. That's why all the emotions, like all the stress, but also the joys and all of that that happens to her during pregnancy is what makes the baby, literally. So when the baby is going through this process, it's a work that they're both doing. It's not just the body of the mother, right? It's not about just dilation. The baby has to do their salutations, right, to all of the directions. The baby has to turn, baby has to, they put so much work also into this process of being born. And while they're going through all of that, which is challenging, if they receive more challenges because the mother is stressed, the mother is being, feeling not respected, not loved, well, the babies are not gonna go through that feeling well. They probably are born traumatized, and I see it, right? I recently had an experience. Babies then cry suddenly. Babies show signs of post-traumatic stress. And then they're like, oh, it's just a difficult baby. It's not a difficult baby. It's a baby who's showing signs of stress after birth. And they show these signs of stress because that's what got imprinted in them at the moment, because the mom was not feeling well. The mom was yelled at. The mom was, forced to do things she didn't want to, for example. Or the birth just, was just too difficult, too painful. And so it is so important that during that moment, it's of course throughout the pregnancy, but during that moment specifically, babies, like not babies, but the mothers are like in a state of calm and in a state in which they feel well with themselves, well with the people who are surrounding them, and total confidence of what's happening with the birth. There's so much like less intensity in the experience when they feel supported, when they feel they're providing physical contact. There's people you cannot just let them go for those hours, 12 hours. You cannot let them go. You have to hold them, right? So mothers need some space, but most of the time that being held help them so much, because the babies then feel that they're being held. They feel respected. And that's how they receive. That's how you welcome them into the world, with a song sometimes, saying words of like, I love you, welcome, you're here. And if you receive with love, that's how you're going to continue to live your life. But if you receive, with violence, with separation, with shots, with all these things, that pain and that creates distrust, that creates fear. And for an infant, a newborn, separation from the mom means death in their mind. So separating the children, like just taking them away to bathe them, to do these things so necessary, but it shapes immediately like the concept that then they have of life. They walk into this world feeling that is unsafe, that is painful, that is not a place we can trust, that we cannot trust people. And then if we're welcomed that way, then that's how we continue to live our lives as well. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Uh, this gives like an understanding that there's so much complexity happening with us as humans. And I know we can talk about this so much more, but I know you have a gift you want to give our listeners. Do you want to share a little about that?
Yeah, thank you. Well, I guess the gift that I wanted to share with people is a very personal, I guess, list of like tips on how to bring back into the space of like parenting all of those resources, all of these ancestral resources that we have. What I share is what I found that has helped me. One, create like the concept of how is it that their spirit, everything, like in everything surrounding us, right? And how can we introduce that to our children so that they can feel, they can understand what their place is in this world. Not above, not underneath anybody, just side to side, just connected in all these beautiful ways to everything that is. And so I have that. I have a list of songs that I would like to share that also speak to that same concept of like being related to everything. And then I guess a list of the things that I've learned to kind of bring into this relationship with my daughter, and in her bringing that also remind her, but also keep reminding me of like that relationship with everything that is, right? So I have very simple things, like very simple tips of things that happen. It's not planned. It's more like naturally, just they just organically happen. But yeah, just how can you just set aside a few minutes to lay down on the grass and look at the sky and look at the clouds moving, or at night looking at the stars? Or how can you just walk through a forest and just be quiet, just listen instead of having to talk about things? Or yeah, just I think I mentioned this before we started recording, but how can you help the insects that get locked inside your house to go back outside? Things like that. Just so just to remind people of all the many opportunities and all the many beautiful ways, so simple and yet so meaningful ways in which they can incorporate like this relationship with everything, right? With the spirit of everything that is surrounding you. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thank you for this gift.
Thank you.
Yeah. And one last thing you want to leave our listeners with?
One last thing. Yeah. I guess I thought on starting with it, but since we're here, there's a poem by Joy Harjo, and the poem is called the Eagle Poem, and it says, to pray, you open your whole self to sky, to earth, to sun, to moon, to one whole voice that is you, and know that there is more that you can see, can hear, can know, accept in moments steadily growing, and in languages that aren't always sound, but other circles of motion. Like eagle that Sunday morning over Salt River, circle in blue sky, in wind, swept our hearts clean with sacred wings. We see you, see ourselves, and know that we must take the utmost care and kindness in all things. Breathe in, knowing we are made of all this, and breathe, knowing we're truly blessed because we were born and die soon within a true circle of motion, like eagles rounding out the morning inside us. We pray that it will be done in beauty. In beauty.
Mm. Yeah, so beautiful. Thank you, Yveth.
Thank you. Thank you.